Welcome back, everybody. It's Thursday, February 5th, 2026. Born on this date in 1934, Hammerin' Hank Aaron of Mobile, who still has more major league home runs than anybody else without a figurative asterisk next to his name. Of course, that's a reference to the man who hit the most home runs in his career, Barry Bonds, and the steroid accusations that have tainted his legacy and kept him out of the Baseball Hall of Fame. Bonds finished his career with 762 home runs to Aaron's 755. Now, you might remember when MLB a couple years ago announced it would include stats from the old Negro leagues in its official career totals. Some of us immediately thought, hey, maybe that's going to give Aaron the title back. We rushed to the online baseball encyclopedia. 2 minutes later, we were disappointed because it turned out that Aaron hit only 5 home runs during his short stint with the Indianapolis Clowns. And it turned out they didn't even count because by 1953, that league had lost just enough of its top players to the National and American leagues that its statistics were no longer eligible for big league consideration. All right, that's our baseball for today. Also born on this date, in 1944, guitarist and songwriter J.R. Cobb of Birmingham. In 1950, former NFL and Auburn University wide receiver Terry Beasley of Montgomery. And in 1973, former NFL defensive end Israel Raybon of Huntsville. Today is National Weather Person's Day. Now, we usually think of TV weather people like Willard Scott. But of course, there are all kinds of meteorologists who forecast or do other work for the National Weather Service, universities, NASA, the military branches, hobbyist observers, and more. And then there's our weather reporter, Lee Morgan, whom I met while she was still in meteorology school. At this point, I think she probably knows everything about weather. Although, if you listen close, you could hear her right now reacting to that.
Why do you do that to me? Why do you say stuff like that? And then I got to say, no.
What's funny is that it took me like 2 minutes to find that clip. Out of all the audio recordings I have in years of doing the show, it took about 2 minutes to find Lee expressing exasperation at something that I said. Anyway, happy National Weather Person's Day, everybody. Today we have a lot of news from the State House and one on a pet at a home improvement store. I'm Mike Morgan, and we're down in Alabama. A bill that came out of the Alabama House of Representatives and would make child rape a capital offense has passed committee in the Senate, reports AL.com's Ruth Servant Smith. Now, if it were to become law, then a conviction for rape, sodomy, and sexual torture of a victim younger than 12 would bring the death penalty or life in prison without the possibility of parole. A similar measure did not make it through last year's session. Then came the Bibb County case this past summer, alleging that a sex trafficking ring committed dozens of horrific crimes against child victims, bringing energy to this legislation even before the session started. State Senator Lance Bell, a Pell City Republican, said he wished the bill would have passed last year so the Bibb County case could be the first of its kind to involve a possible death penalty. The U.S. Supreme Court has previously ruled that executing someone in a non-murder case violates the constitutional ban on cruel and unusual punishment. But supporters of the Alabama measure have noted that other states have passed similar legislation, so they hope it will no longer be considered as unusual. A bill to officially rename the Gulf of Mexico, at least in the eyes of the Alabama state government, passed committee and is set to go before the House of Representatives, reports AL.com's Mike Kaysen. Now, of course, President Trump issued an executive order not long after taking office last year to declare the body of water the Gulf of America. A bill from State Representative David Standridge, a Hayden Republican, would compel state agencies to comply with Trump's wishes in, quote, terminology in all newly created maps, documents, educational materials, websites, official communications, and other resources. Now, he said it's not intended to toss otherwise usable resources that still refer to Gulf of Mexico or to force its application, quote, if compliance would impose an operational or financial burden on the state or local entity and their employees. He said the bill was important to provide clarity on an official designation as needed by state agencies and offices. Democrats pushed back on the effort in committee, with some calling it a waste of valuable time. Representative Kelvin Lawrence, a Haynesville Democrat, asked what the state should do if the next president changed the name back to the Gulf of Mexico. And Standridge said, I can't imagine a president wanting to use Mexico instead of America and change it back. Well, now, whether the next president does or not, he or she could absolutely repeal any standing executive orders, and they often do. Presidential executive orders apply mostly to the federal executive branch and are not law. So the order that Trump signed meant that federal agencies would call the Gulf by the new name, but that anyone else, states, businesses, Rand McNally, is of course free to use the established name, the new name, or whatever it wants to use. It's still a mostly free country. The president did limit the Associated Press's White House access to try to force the AP to amend its style book to reflect the name change. But generally speaking, there are no speech enforcement officers to come get you if you call it the Gulf of Doo-Wah-Diddy. Now, already passed by the House this week is a Governor Kay Ivey-supported bill that would make fleeing from the law in a vehicle a felony, reports AL.com's Mike Kaysen. Currently, eluding or attempting to elude a law enforcement officer is a Class A misdemeanor, meaning it could get you up to a year in jail. Under the new bill, it would be a Class D felony, bumping the high end of the sentence to 5 years, if a child under 14 is in the vehicle with you, if the offender has been released on bail, probation, parole, or serving in a community corrections or work release program, or if the offender has previously been convicted of eluding or attempting to elude. And Mama Cat may have lost her gig at the Gadsden Lowe's, but she became an internet celebrity this week, reports AL.com's Amber Sutton. And that's all of our dream, to become an internet celebrity. Mama Cat has worked the unpaid position of quality assurance cat at that Lowe's location for about 5 years. She worked pest control duties and would greet customers in the store. And late last month, she was named Pet of the Day by WBRC TV in Birmingham. Now, that sounds like way too much fun, and we can't have that. So, after the WBRC spot, it didn't take long for the suits at Lowe's headquarters to put a stop to Mama Cat's service, ordering her removed because of customer complaints. Enter social media. A petition to reinstate Mama Cat has been signed by a few thousand people. Businesses are sharing memes of Mama Cat working at their stores and even as an emergency dispatcher. The city of Gadsden passed a resolution declaring February 3rd Mama Cat Day. Now, if the timing were right, she might even have the Gulf named after her. Meanwhile, Mama Cat has reportedly taken up residence with one of the store's employees. We'll have to see whether retirement suits her well enough to stay away. Thank y'all for listening. We're going to be back here in the morning. Until then, come on, see what we're doing anytime you can on the internet at al.com.